Vanished into history are creatures known for their strength and for spreading corruption. Born out of forbidden wedlock of fallen angels and daughters of men, these giants wreak havoc on earth until God destroyed them and everything in the world through the Great Flood. Did the Nephilim or giants exist? What are the other giants talked about in the Bible? Join us as we discuss the Christian lore that will blow your mind. The term Nephilim appears in the Old Testament of the Bible, specifically in the book of Genesis. The passage that refers to the Nephilim is Genesis 6:4, which states, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans, and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." The mention of the Nephilim in this passage is somewhat brief and doesn't provide extensive details about them. However, it suggests that the Nephilim were a group of beings who existed in ancient times, born from the union of the sons of God and human women. If you need more detailed history of these creatures, you can find it in the book on the screen. Another perspective associates the Nephilim with the descendants of Cain, the son of Adam and Eve. Cain committed the first murder by killing his brother Abel, and as a result, God cursed him. The descendants of Cain, known as the Canaanites, interbred with close bloodlines leading to the birth of the Nephilim. Does this mean that the Nephilim were there even after the Great Flood? During the time of Noah, who was considered pure along with his family, it is theorized that the genetic code of the Nephilim were preserved through the wives of Noah's sons. This allowed the Nephilim to re-emerge after the Great Flood, as the wives were not of pure bloodline like Noah. The term giants is also associated with the Nephilim, and they are mentioned again in the book of Numbers. In Numbers 13, 12 scouts were sent to explore the land of Canaan, which was promised to the Israelites. The scouts reported encountering fearsome inhabitants, particularly the descendants of Anak, who were described as giants. The Anakim were believed to be connected to the Nephilim due to their exceptional stature, possibly inherited from the pre-flood Nephilim bloodline. Upon hearing about the powerful inhabitants of Canaan, the Israelites grew fearful and doubted their ability to conquer the land. Despite the reports of the giants, only 2 of the scouts maintained their faith in God's power to overcome the challenges, while the others succumbed to fear and disbelief. The Lord responded with anger when the Israelites disobeyed him. He chose to withhold his power from the current generation, declaring that they would not inherit the promised land, but rather their children would. The next day, many of the people, hoping to regain the Lord's favor, rose to fight their enemies, the Amalekites and the Canaanites in the valley. However, the Lord was not with them, and they suffered a defeat. Among the 12 scouts sent to explore the land, only Joshua and Caleb never doubted the Lord's abilities. Caleb, from the tribe of Judah, played a significant role in future events. During the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, they encountered more giant adversaries. One of them was Og of Bashan, whom Israel faced in the Battle of Edrei before to this. Israel had already experienced victories in driving out the Amorites from their land. God reaffirmed to Moses that they need not fear Og, as he had delivered him and his people into their hands, just as he had done with Sihon, the Amorite king who dwelt in Heshbon. Og, the last remnant of the Rephaim, was a descendant of the giant named Rapha. The Rephaim were known to be as tall as the Anakim. They were also referred to as the Zamzummim and the Eman, as mentioned earlier in the book of Genesis. Another encounter with giants occurred during the time of Abraham, when Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, waged the campaign against 5 Canaanite city-states. Returning to Og, he was a powerful king who ruled over 6 fortified cities in the land of Bashan. His territory was often associated with darkness, either due to the geographical features of the valley or the pagan practices of the Rephaim. However, as God promised, light would ultimately conquer darkness, and Og and his sons were slain. The Israelites occupied his former cities. Fast forward to the conquest of Canaan, Joshua and Caleb were the only men from the previous generation who inherited the promised land. Joshua expelled the Anakim from his hill country, while Caleb completely drove them out of Hebron. However, some Anakim managed to escape and sought refuge in the 3 Philistine cities, Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. The Philistines were believed to be the original sea people, migrating from coastal areas and establishing themselves in the eastern Mediterranean. Known for their skill in ironworking, weapon forging, and chariot making, the Philistines dominated the flat coastal plains but were ineffective in the mountainous regions of central Israel. Nearly 400 years after Moses' death, the giants who had fled from Joshua and Caleb began mocking Israel. The Philistines gathered their armies, camped on the southern side of the valley Elah, and faced the Israelites on the northern side. A champion of the Philistines, a feared adversary of the Israelites, challenged them to send forth a warrior to fight him in a single combat. This champion, known as Goliath of Gath, taunted the Israelite camp for 40 days until a young shepherd named David overheard his challenge. David, the overlooked son of Jesse from Bethlehem, volunteered to fight Goliath. His words reached King Saul, who summoned David. Filled with faith in the Lord, David assured Saul that he would face the giant. Though Saul tried to equip David with his armor, it proved too heavy, so David opted to face Goliath in his shepherd's attire. Armed with his sling and 5 smooth stones from a brook, David confronted Goliath. Goliath arrogantly cursed David and the Lord, but David responded with unwavering trust in God's power. He declared that Goliath's defeat would come from the Lord, emphasizing the victory did not rely on weapons but on the Lord's might. With a single stone flung from his sling, David struck Goliath on the forehead, causing him to fall to the ground. David then beheaded Goliath using the giant's sword. Goliath's armor, resembling scales, symbolizing the fulfillment of God's prophecy concerning the serpent in the Garden of Eden. The news of David's triumph reached King Saul, who sent for him. David's faith in the Lord, coupled with his past experiences defending his sheep against a lion and a bear, convinced Saul to let him fight Goliath. Rejecting Saul's armor, David armed himself with his sling and stones. This young shepherd would later become a renowned ruler, united the tribes of Israel, and founded the Judean dynasty. David's son Solomon continued to expand the empire his father had established. However, at this moment, David was simply an obedient shepherd entrusted with transporting provisions for his brothers on the front lines. When he overheard Goliath's threats, David and the Philistine, Goliath of Gath, finally stood face to face. Goliath's imposing figure towered at a staggering height of 9 feet and 6 inches. Clad in heavy armor weighing 125 pounds and wielding a 15-pound spear, he exuded a formidable presence. Mocking David and his lord, Goliath taunted him, threatening to feed his flesh to the birds and beasts. Undeterred, David fearlessly responded, acknowledging the Philistines' arsenal of weapons, but declaring that he came in the name of the Lord's host, the God of Israel's armies, whom Goliath had defied. David proclaimed that on this day the Lord would deliver Goliath into his hands, and he would strike him down, severing his head. David affirmed that the battle belonged to the Lord, who would grant them victory. Goliath advanced towards David with his spear and shield, while David reached into his bag, preparing a sling with a stone. With a swift motion, David released the stone, striking Goliath squarely on the forehead. The giant toppled to the ground face first, defeated by the precision of David's aim. Standing over the fallen Goliath, David drew his sword, swiftly removing the giant's head. Goliath's armor, described as having a scaly design, harkened back to the ancient prophecy regarding the serpent in the Garden of Eden. God had foretold that the seed of the woman would bruise the serpent's head. In a symbolic echo of that prophecy, David's stone striking Goliath's forehead represented the triumph of good over evil. In conclusion, giants have long been a source of defilement in the world, emerging as wicked spawns, consuming all in their path. Despite the Lord's cleansing flood, the bloodline survived and resurfaced in the new world. Yet, whenever giants were found, the Lord sent his people to confront them. The tribe of Judah, known as the Lion of the Israelites, would ultimately slay one of the last remnants of this ancient corruption. The existence of giants has marred mankind since ancient times. Born from evil origins, they multiplied and brought devastation to the earth. However, the Lord chose his people, including Caleb from the tribe of Judah, to confront and defeat these giants. Eventually, this bloodline would lead to the birth of a hero who would become the ultimate savior, Jesus Christ. Through him in faith, one can find love, comfort, and strength and be redeemed from the bondage of sin. No challenge is unsurmountable when relying on the power and grace of Jesus Christ.